Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. Today our guest is a Turkish novelist, essayist, columnist, Ece Temelkuran. Your books have been translated into 20 languages, and the latest is How to Lose a Country, the 7 Steps from Democracy to Dictatorship. It was also published this week in French by Stock with the title Comment conduire un pays à sa perte. Ece, welcome to the studio and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, if you live in a democracy and if you think that nothing can really shake it or make it collapse, you're just fooling yourself. This is the message that you are giving to your readers. In your book, you are dissecting the different right-wing populist movements in Europe. The one, for example, that ended up with Brexit in the UK, or the election of Viktor Orban in Hungary, the Five-Star Movement in Italy, and even the election of Donald Trump in the United States. And you compare that to what happened to Turkey, meaning in your country, and the result is quite interesting. So my first question is, Ece, what triggered your interest? How did you decide, why did you decide to write such a book?
Well, right-wing populism was quite interested in me. Therefore, I wanted to return that interest, in fact. Well, as we all know now, Turkey has been through a lot since the last 15, 17 years, in fact, now. And the first years of right-wing populism in Turkey was full of confusion and, mess, and, we didn't really understand what was happening to us. And when we did, it was already too late. Right-wing populism and then an authoritarian regime seized the power. I think I wanted European countries and United States not to waste the same time that we did in Turkey, and to understand what's coming towards them, and maybe they can be better than us in terms of protecting their democracy and, their morality, their sanity, in fact. It is considered, every country thinks that it's very unique. Obviously, there are unique conditions to every country. But then right-wing populism, as far as I can see, as far as I can observe, have seven common global patterns. And despite the fact that every country has its own fragile consensuses, has its own confusing debates going on at the moment, behind that noise and mess, the same mechanism operates, which we call right-wing populism today. And if we recognize the fundamental logic of that mechanism, I thought that we can join a global conversation, and hopefully maybe we can join a global solidarity against what's coming towards us. I do think that we need each other. Europeans and Americans need Turkish experience, and we need the peoples of Europe and United States, especially their intellectual stamina.
That's the question, I think, Ece, because is it really possible to compare Turkey to some other Western countries in the way that Turkey has never been, let's say, a real democracy? It faced a lot of coups. The last one, it was an attempt, but the last one was in July 2016. And you say that if we take into account that each country has its own history, its own culture, its own experience, how appropriate is it to make such a comparison?
Actually, it's not a comparison. I am calling everyone for the conversation. Obviously, there are similarities. And I think that from India to United States, many people who are concerned about the situation will recognize these 7 steps or common global patterns, even though they have completely different languages, different histories, and different strength of democracy. Obviously, European states have more mature democracies, and their state institutions are stronger, are more matured than Turkey. But this doesn't make a difference. No democracy is immune to this contamination of right-wing populism, in my point of view. Also, as a world, globally, we have been through especially for the last 40 decades, 30, 40 decades, the treatment of neoliberalism, so to speak. And this created a moral and political damage, not only in terms of politics, but also on the very essence of humankind. And when it comes to that, I think every country went through the same destructive period. Therefore, I think it is, I'm not comparing countries, but it is very useful to see the world as a whole and to protect the world as a whole, the entire planet.
You are listing in your book some steps, some stages that would help us to feel or to understand that a country is slipping to the other side, to the dark side, let's say. And I would like to know, according to you, what is the starting point, let's say, of losing a country?
Well, it starts in every country the same way, in fact. It starts with the word movement. The buzzword is movement. And the second buzzword is asking for respect. As if it is like, a sort of mobilized and organized, politicized ignorance comes to the political stage, and they ask for respect. And the right-wing populist leaders and the spin doctors promise people a certain greatness, and they are talking about a illusion of grandeur. They are talking about a sweet nostalgia of greater past, and so on. This happens the same way, and it is in fact quite ironic, because Turkish people, especially for the last years, after Trump and after Brexit started happening, they have been following European and American news with a broken smile on their faces, because they know and they recognize what's going on there. And they remember their own days when right-wing populism came to Turkish political stage. And they remember their own, they have been deceived, and so on and so forth. So I think there are many people in Turkey who would like to help British people before they go insane because of Brexit. I know it's not easy for British people to accept such a help. I am pretty sure they don't see themselves in that position. They see themselves in a more, the position of, granting help. But in this particular business, we are more experienced than them.
We don't have very much time left, but I would like also to ask another question, and this is something that you're talking about in the chapter of your book. You're talking about losing morality, and I do remember this very famous phrase that you had in a television debate in Turkey when you were asking some pro-Erdogan people, when did you become so cruel? So the question is, do you think that it's more difficult to deal with the leaders or with the followers?
Well, followers turn into little minions of the leader if you waste time enough. If enough time passes. That is why, before that happens, I think we have to talk to the people, not to the spin doctors of right-wing populism and the leaders. And if we don't, every country will be asking the same question, I think. When did people become so cruel? Why is there so much shamelessness and so on? And people in Europe started asking that, and I know how it feels. It's quite heartbreaking, and you start losing faith in humankind. That's an irreversible thing.
So what do you think that we should do to fight against this new right populist movements?
Well, with the book, I try to provide a kind of a toolkit to understand the game, at least, because this is a political game and it should be dealt politically. And I try to decipher the logic of right-wing populism so that people, when they're talking to right-wing populist spin doctors, they wouldn't fall into their game. Hopefully it will help, and we will engage in a global conversation, and then maybe, we can find a way collectively.
My last question, Ece, and I will ask you to answer very quickly, is where do you think that we are heading? Is it like a new world order that is emerging?
I am very,
What kind of world is that?
very carefully following the climate strikers because right-wing populism is a 21st century problem, and the new generation of political subjects are going to invent new political tools to overcome that.
So
It's going to be good.
it's going to be good. Good. Very last question. How do you feel about what is happening right now in Turkey with the opposition that is winning some municipalities?
I am
as Istanbul?
cautiously happy, and we are so used to being cautiously happy in Turkey. I think we caught the tiger by its tail, and that's why we're going to have some interesting times in Turkey.
How do you feel about this new figure that is emerging, Ekrem
Imamoglu. I think everybody admires him for his mastery in keeping his temper intact, because it's not easy not to get angry, not to burst out with fury after all the things that have been done to him. So everybody is, in awe of him for the fact that he's keeping himself together.
Ece, thank you very much. Stay tuned to France 24, more news to come.